no prep, and we're live, and here we go. So,
Sweet.
howdy, y'all.
Hi,
This is
everybody.
this is Kyle Whittington, and I am joined today by Michael Caprice, who runs the channel Become the Night, and he is the executive lead guitarist for the band Crusade. And we're just gonna get to talk and get to know you a little bit. So, Michael, thank you for joining.
Thanks so much for having me, Kyle. And thank you so much for the invite to the Creator Conference. I'm really stoked on that.
Dude, the Creator Conference is gonna be a freaking blast. I've just been blown away. So I think I've told the story on the channel before, but
This is the very first one, correct?
this is the very first one. But like, I've
Sick,
gotten
okay.
so many comments like, "Oh, I'm so glad this is happening. I've been waiting for this to happen forever," and it's just like, boom. So
I'm kind of shocked it hasn't happened already, considering like they're not all massive, but there's like a huge ecosystem of Catholic creators. It's pretty wild.
yeah, well, and we can talk more offline about this, but yeah, it's something like this where it brings us all together face to face within strangling distance to have a conversation, whatever. Because I mean, you and I don't know you too well, but I imagine that, we're going to disagree on some things, and that's okay.
Yeah, probably. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like we just need to be able to have that conversation without like, going back and forth making response videos and whatnot. So
Or
that's
with
all
whiskey and cigars.
exactly, like,
Yes.
hey, I don't agree with you. I think you're wrong here. Let's go meet up at the cigar lounge and we'll talk it out. So any international personalities coming? Yes, we have this Australian guy named Matt Frad. Who's going to be speaking at the conference. So that's about as international as we get. So, but he's a
Crap,
U.S.
I forgot to
citizen.
send you a picture. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's fine. I just pulled your LinkedIn photo.
Word, okay.
So, but yeah. But anyway, okay, cool. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, where you're from? What's your faith background? Yeah.
Okay, so I was born and raised in central Pennsylvania, cradle Catholic. My mom and dad were quite traditional. I would say like conservative, traditional, somewhere in there. Not TLM attending, but what was I going to say? Sorry, the chat distracted me. I'm going to turn the chat off. Yeah, so my parents right now, I think even while I was in high school, became third order secular Carmelites. And that gives you any insight into how seriously they take their faith.
Okay.
Lots of prayer. The joke that our parish priest made was that when he walks into our living room, he doesn't know whether to say hi or to genuflect. Because there's just stuff everywhere, just all over the place, just tons of holy stuff. Yeah, my parents are absolutely wonderful. A lot of people, I feel like it's the common thing to say I was poorly catechized, but I was like one of the people growing up who didn't think he was poorly catechized.
Okay.
I thought I had a pretty decent grasp, at least more so than most other people my age. And you start liking girls, start getting into guitar when you're a teenager, and then you start having ambitions of being a rock star, right? Like we all do. And I know this was going to come as a shocker. I fell away from my faith for a few years, pursuing mammon.
Right.
But yeah, went to college, dropped away from my faith, had a little bit of like a tiny resurgence of my faith in there when I was going through some trouble. We could talk about a different time.
Sure.
But eventually wound up setting it to the side. There was even like a good 3-month stretch where I was even like thinking I was atheist,
Oh,
like that far away. And I forget exactly what it was that kept me from being completely atheist, but I'd say I lived most of my post-Catholic life as an agnostic. So after college, moved to Nashville, pursuing the music career, and was mostly setting the religion thing to the side. It's like, oh, we'll figure it out eventually. Don't have to worry about that right now. I want to enjoy life. I'm focused on music. And And obviously that's the completely wrong choice. You know, at that point, I wasn't even sure what I fully believed politically, other than just being like default libertarian. And I eventually, it was after the terrorist bombing in Paris that I remember being shocked into actually keeping track of the news cycle, and started to actually develop more of my political beliefs, which were definitely right-leaning. For a little bit there, it was more conservative. Then it went the whole way into like anarcho-capitalism. Then it came back to more like conservatarian. These days, I don't even know what I am, but we can talk about that later. You know, like,
Sure.
I don't know. Politics seems so droll next to theology.
Yep.
But that's really where I started listening more to like Ben Shapiro, and he really started pounding into people's brains. You know, like here's the things, folks, that you're gonna have to have set done before you go and get married. Okay, before you start dating, you got to get sure that the religion, you know, like the religion and all this stuff. You know, so
I was not ready for that.
So, yeah, like he put a lot of focus on like your household needs to have the same values. Mom and dad need to have the same values. Otherwise, you're going to have a divorce, and that's going to ruin your lives and your kids' lives. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't want that. So, still kept putting it off. I was like, man, like once I get like the money situation figured out, once I get like the money stuff, and that never came around. And it just kind of got to an age where I had to start thinking to myself realistically, you know, I got to shit or get off the pot on my religious beliefs. I did have an event years prior to where like I did confirm in my own mind that God did exist, although I didn't know whether that was more Catholic or whatnot. But it was this past July, I think it was. It was either July or June. I went up for a family reunion. My extended family on my mom's side is like still very close. So we went up there, and it was so good to see all of them. It was like enlivening. And many of my cousins are now married, and there's just tons of grandkids running all over the place. And it gets me so happy. But then there is just like never before, ever in my life, there was this thing in my heart that was just screaming like, you want this. You really, really want this. And I was like, shit, when I come back home, I gotta figure it out. And I told God that as well. And when I got back, he reminded me. So I have a friend of mine who's actually Orthodox, and he's been trying to pull me in that direction for a little bit. I made a few visits to Divine Liturgy on Sundays. Okay. You know, it was cool. It's beautiful. You know. And he was like, you know, you should check out this book, The Orthodox Way. This is like a quick digest of all of the beliefs of Orthodoxy. And I was going through it, and it starts off as God is mystery, and it's like starts bringing back all of this stuff that I remember when I was much younger, and I was like, oh yeah, like this is so cool. And really put a huge emphasis on the Trinity, that, you know, being separated from the religion for so long and then coming back to it, you realize just how much like a fantasy novel it is. Like it's wild. It's so cool. It's really wild. Super cool. But you know, then as it goes to God as Trinity, and it starts talking about the only begotten Son. Is it begotten? Or sorry, is the Holy Spirit filioque or not filioque? And that whole argument. And when I got to that part of the book, I paused it. And I'm like, okay, now I need to hear the Catholic side of things. And that sent me on a whole rabbit hole of many different religions and many different flavors of Christianity. But I eventually, you know, settled back on Rome. It to me makes the most logical, consistent sense. If you're taking everyone on their best faith arguments, I think it's the one that has the least problems with it, for lack of a better term. Interesting. I mean, also, there's nothing to do with confirmation bias in this whatsoever. Not at all.
Right. Yeah, of course. And I think that's perfectly fair, because as much as people want to pretend like, oh, I looked at this perfectly objective, like, no, you didn't. You're literally
No,
incapable.
not at all.
Like, no, you didn't. I didn't either. And like, and I'm man enough to admit that. But it's genuine. So there we go. So I guess okay. So we were saying that that I guess I kind of want to dive in a little bit deeper to the why not Orthodox question. So
Okay.
yeah. So
Sure.
like you said that the Catholic beliefs were a little bit more consistent. Like, what did you mean by that?
Well, specifically on the filioque, and I haven't even dived into all the differences between Orthodoxy and Catholicism, just to be clear. But specifically on the filioque, it seems like an argument over wording rather than the actual concept itself, which Paul specifically talks about not dividing ourselves over in the epistles. I forget exactly which part it is, but like that's in there. But proceeds from the Father through the Son. Why couldn't we just say that and get back together? Well, that's because at this point, that's more of a thing that people point to in history because it was the excuse that they used to break off, when really there's a lot of other political things involved with the split. And that's kind of one of the things that makes me a little uncomfortable with some of the Orthodox stuff, and I'm not trying to impugn them whatsoever, but because they are ethnic churches as opposed to a universal church, you kind of start getting into a little bit dicey territory as far as whose government you're nudging up against. Not to mention, I mean, even many Orthodox still say that there should be a unity pointing at Rome. They just don't point at it right now because I don't know, whatever reason they give. So it's all of it seems to point to Rome. There's enough history to say that Peter was the first pope and that each successor is a valid successor. So I don't know. Is that sufficient?
Yeah. No. Well, I mean, for you, the real question is that sufficient for you? Because like, it's your life, it's your faith. You are the one who's supposed to work out your salvation with fear and trembling.
I'm really curious how the Orthodox interpret upon this Kepha I will build my church.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, it depends on who you're talking to. So,
fair.
We've gotten the Nicene Creed that the four marks of the church are 1, holy, Catholic, and apostolic. Orthodox are 100% apostolic. Nobody's denying that except for Protestants, and we don't care about that. But like 1, that's really shaky. However, there's a lot of unity in the liturgical expression, especially like the Divine Liturgy. So like, I suppose there's an argument to be made there, but that Catholic identifier always gets me, because it's like, it's not a universal appeal. You mentioned the ethnic, like these are ethnic churches. Now, from what I understand, apparently that's just a Greek and Russian thing. So if you go so like, I guess the Antiochians are less ethnic and they're a little bit more welcoming. I don't know.
The Antiochians seem pretty darn cool all around, I gotta say. Actually, one of the Orthodox, it wasn't a liturgy, but it was their Vespers for their Easter. I went to was this like tiny mission church, and it was kind of Antiochian style. No pews, were either standing or were sitting on the ground, and I kind of loved that.
It's funny. So recently we registered. Actually, earlier this week, I finally registered at the local Melkite mission that's here around Steubenville. So we've been going to more Eastern liturgies, and I've just I guess my mindset on that is, Pope St. John Paul II said that, East and West are the 2 lungs of the church. And I realized that I have no idea how to breathe with this other lung. So like we registered there. We're not gonna be canonically switching or anything, but I just want to be here and learn and learn how to breathe with this other lung that's not particularly infected with Protestantism. So
yeah.
So
My sister is Byzantine, so it wasn't like a whole
Oh,
new experience for me. It was when I went to her liturgy, but yeah, like, and she's like Catholic Byzantine, not Orthodox Byzantine. So yeah, that was pretty cool. Trying to first of all understand what I was even looking at and how this could possibly be Catholic. Look nothing like the Catholic that I knew. And then now going to I attend a TLM parish. Now looking at that, I'm like, oh, there's so many similarities. They're very different in many ways, but like, man, we lost a ton of that tradition.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like it's interesting because like previously to moving here, we went to Institute of Christ the King Oratory, and whenever I first attended my first divine liturgy, I thought it was just amazing. Like obviously, it looks radically different, but those elements that are still the same there. But when you're talking about no pews, since attending this Melkite liturgy, I have like developed this deep-seated hatred for pews. I hate everything about them, and I want them gone especially because like I can barely stand in them, and I can't like turn sideways, and I'm just too big of a guy. So yeah, man.
I go both ways on this. So on one hand, I think it's really cool, and there's something important captured in that when you're just going as a person with nothing else, no trappings, and you're going to worship the Lord. Especially like a lot of those Orthodox churches will have like a couple icons up front that you can just venerate whenever you feel called to venerate them. It's wonderful. But like on one hand, there's something very like I'm not exactly sure what word to use, but the way that Jesus called us to let go of all your belongings and follow him. Like there's nothing in there other than you and Jesus, and there's something great about that. On the other hand, when it comes to pews come with kneelers, and right. I do love the Western practice of kneeling.
Yes.
Our TLM church doesn't have kneelers because our TLM church is being renovated, so we're stuck in this tiny chapel area that isn't supposed to be a chapel, with a bunch of folding chairs, and we're kneeling directly on hardwood. It is not fun. So I mean, you don't technically need kneelers to kneel, but I feel like, I don't know, with how most of the Novus Ordo people are these days, I think you'd be hard pressed to get them to.
So I have a story because like I know exactly. I've been there. I've gone to mass there before. I know exactly what you're talking about. Do you mind if I share a story, even though
please
people are gonna know where it is. So. But I mean, you're not exactly the biggest personality that goes there, though. So.
Yeah.
So we're visiting Nashville, and we wanted to go to a Latin mass, and we had heard that there's only one, and we had some friends that had been previously going here, and because we were traveling with certain family members who I don't want to call out publicly, like you never arrive more than 5 minutes early to mass when they're involved. So. We get there we've got 4 kids.
You're going to high mass?
Yes.
Oh gosh. Okay, no, dude. Okay, you got to be there at least 30 minutes at least.
So 5 minutes before mass starts, we got 4 kids and 4 adults, and it's just like we're gonna have to split up. There's no 2 ways about it. So my 6-year-old son is just like inspired. And he's like, hey, Dad, I want to go sit up close to the front. So I'm like, okay, all right, go ahead, lead the way, buddy. And he's holding my hand, and he's dragging me. And we get up there, and I see this guy sitting over there. Like there's like 3 seats here. And I said, hey, are these seats taken? And Michael Knowles looks up at me and goes, nah, man, you're good. I was just like, oh, crap. Like, this guy's going to think that I hunted him down.
Right?
And I'm like, oh, no. So,
no, to be fair, he's probably very used to that. Just like not the hunting down, but like just the fact that there's no space in there, so every seat is going to be taken up every single time. Yeah, Michael Knowles does not get privacy at our mass.
Yeah. So like anyway, I was just kind of like I wanted to like make it clear that like, hey, I wasn't looking for you. My son led me here, so I was just like, oh, it's pretty crowded. It's a good problem to have. And he's like, yeah, we're really blessed to have this, and it's just. okay, yeah. It's like, yeah, we're just visiting. We came for a Scott Hahn talk at the cathedral, and he goes, oh, how was that? I was thinking about going, but I don't. They sold out of tickets before I could get in. He's like, it was really good. He's like, yeah, I was looking at his theology of the body stuff. So actually, and now I'm gonna like, I guess, speak to Michael's credit here. Like, that is a man who, like, he is like serious about his faith. He's not some other personalities that just like wear their faith as like a marketing ploy. Like, in his free time, he's talking.
I have thoughts on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Not on Michael. Michael's the real deal. Michael's the real deal.
The dude's the real deal. But we both know, like, well, I mean, I feel like it's safe to call out the president who wears his Catholic faith, and like, it's just one of those things of, you say that you're Catholic, but like, you've barely done anything that like is approved by the church. So like,
it's not like, I mean, unless you want to just go on this tangent, I don't know.
Let's go. We got time.
I have nothing good to say about the president.
It's an
nothing at all.
Reforms.
He is so blatantly anti-Catholic that I don't know. I shouldn't say I don't know how. I do know how, because politics, but he should be excommunicated. It's just very plainly clear. Okay, like, if anyone's wondering, no, I don't talk about this stuff all the time.
So
it came up in conversation.
Push back on that a little bit.
Go for it.
First off, I'm not even saying that I disagree that he should be excommunicated, but I think that like, the thing to like really remember is he has everything. He's done everything that he can be excommunicated. Like, there's no canonical impediments to doing exactly that. But I think the big thing is, it's politics. Excommunicating the leader of a nation. Oh my gosh, that's going to have like such repercussions, and it's just like, do those outweigh the good? But now at the same time,
I don't think, because the West is so bought into modernism, I don't think anything would come of it at all, other than Joe Biden not abusing our Lord in the Eucharist. That's the only thing that would come of it.
Yeah,
I don't know, the Pope. I mean, Pope Francis excommunicating anyone that isn't traditional, I think at this point, is a pie in the sky. But like, Pope Francis excommunicating the president, who's gonna whine? All the lefties who don't like Catholicism? Oh, gee,
That is true.
What do they care? Every right winger will cheer and not vote for him.
We recently had a conversation in my Discord server about monetization of your channel, and I think you and I were both on the same wavelength of, like, some people will complain that you monetized, but those people are just looking to hate, and there's really no pleasing them. So like, don't even try.
I get complaints all the time. Anytime I have a video that smells remotely like an ad from my own audience, and it's secular, you know what I mean?
Right.
You're gonna have people in every audience that thinks that the only way to have any level of purity is to do it all for free. People who can make all their content for free, God bless you, that's amazing. But I mean, I don't think most of the complainers realize how much time and effort and stress and emotional exertion goes into putting this stuff out,
Right.
So
right.
I mean, I think the way that I worded it was, you should worry less about if the person is making money or having any amount of revenue. I shouldn't even say making money, having revenue from the content, and you should worry more about what is that revenue going towards.
Okay.
I think that's the big thing,
Yeah.
Like, I don't care that Trent Horn makes six figures. I think it's great. I'll happily pay for him to have six figures, I don't give a crap. He does amazing work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also, like, I can tell you, because I kind of worked with Trent for a little while. That man, I don't know how he sleeps. He is the busiest guy that I know.
And he's got a number of kids. I don't know how many. It's not my business, but he's got kids.
Yeah, he's got a family.
Laura. I mean, come on.
He works for Catholic Answers, so he's doing Catholic Answers things. He's writing books. He's running his channel, which uploads twice a week.
He does debates.
He does debates. He's an adjunct professor at Holy Apostles College. Like,
I forgot about that part. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like, and then he does like appearances on other people's channels. So like, I don't know where the man finds time to sleep. And that might also seem like every time I've seen him in person, he always looks like, oh, hey, Kyle, like he's just like.
That's the way he was when I talked to him.
Oh.
The dude would dominate in poker, absolutely would dominate in poker. But, like, I couldn't tell if he was just like, I have zero interest in talking to this person, or if it was just the fact that he was trying to be, like, stone cold the way that he does in his debates to make sure he doesn't give anything away to his opponents, or I couldn't tell if he was just absolutely wiped out because he was super busy. And it enraged me that I couldn't tell. Made me so mad.
Yeah.
It's like everyone else here is very positive. I'm feeling great. And Trent is giving me nothing. Nothing at all.
Nice. Yeah. So that's Trent's great though. Like he's hard to figure out, but he's doing such amazing, and his channel's like he's doing so good.
I think it's like the hugest blessing for all of Catholicism that he is getting all of these high profile culture debates. I think that like we need him in more of those. 1, he's outstanding at it. 2, he always keeps his calm. And 3, he I forget what number 3 was, but another awesome compliment for Trent Horn. He is such a fabulous representative for Catholicism in the current culture, I think. It's like it's about at the temperature where people are going to be a lot more receptive to it than they used to be.
Yeah, and if this were to turn into a clip, it's like Kyle and Mike fangirl over Trent Horn. So nice. Okay, so to get back on track a little bit. Okay, so you were catechized, and you thought you were well catechized, and you kind of fell away. So what did that look like? How did that happen?
So most, I shouldn't say most of the formal education that I got in the faith was through CCD, like a lot of other Catholics growing up. And it wasn't bad, but it wasn't amazing. I mean, CCD is predicated on the fact that you're going to learn the absolute basics here, and your parents are going to fill in a bunch of the blanks when they go home, which I can't speak to any other families. My parents did. As a matter of fact, I remember several times coming home and my dad being like, "What are you learning? What are they teaching you in CCD? This is heresy." Like, not literally heresy, but you know what I mean? Like,
your dad sounds like a fun guy to get a beer with.
Oh, he's amazing. Well, these days, not beer, but probably a martini would be his style. But yeah, nice. My dad is fantastic. Love him. Anyway, so like a lot of the catechesis that I got was my parents. And my dad read so many. I wish I could show you. There's like probably 8 to 9 bookshelves completely filled in my parents' home with mostly religious material, and it's not just all Catholic stuff. It's stuff against the faith, for the faith, philosophy, history. There's like tons of stuff. So my dad was very, very well read. And my mom, God bless her, just has like the greatest heart ever. And she was really into reading the saints and their writings. So my dad did eventually as well. But she was really, really big into Teresa of Avila and Therese. And I think that's what called her to being a Carmelite eventually.
Nice.
So I got a bunch of that stuff as a kid. I don't know how many children who were raised Catholic in the United States actually had their parents reading the saints. So I was familiar broadly with Saint Teresa's Little Way before I ever went off to college. I feel like there's a bunch of people who grew up Catholic who didn't even discover that until after college.
Yeah.
So in that sense, there's some extra catechesis there, but then on other things, like the Mass is a sacrifice. Like, okay, I don't really get that. I think I understand the term. I don't really get, like, I didn't get that when I was younger. I get that now, or even just like why the priest does even half of the stuff that he does at the Novus Ordo Mass. I didn't really feel like I had a great catechesis on that. So God bless the internet in the 21st century, because I have done a fairly decent job of getting myself caught up on a bunch of things that I missed.
Nice.
And how incredibly beautiful our faith still is to this day.
Nice. Okay, so one question that I had is, when did you get involved with the band? When did you get involved with Crusade?
So, Crusade is kind of my pet project, if you will. I shouldn't say pet project. It was really the whole reason why I came down here and even started a YouTube channel in the first place. Oh yeah, Crusade, the sick merch that I'm trying to rep, so people will go check out my band. But
message me the link to that, and I'll put it in the description later.
Yes. So, I knew I wanted to start a band when I got here. Initially, I was looking to join a band because I thought it would be easier to get in and start meeting people. And I did that for like a year, and I said, screw this. These people wasted so much of my time. They wasted so much time in general. I'm just going to go do this myself. And that's why I started the YouTube channel, is to build an audience for when I finally released my music. And the band grew out of a bunch of demos that I had, and I found a drummer. His name is Ryan. Love him to death. And then other guys came along as that kept developing. So it just kind of grew over time. It took a while, but it grew over time. Let me get the links for you here. Let me get you a Spotify link. Yeah, we've been a band officially like 4 or 5 years now.
Okay.
Haven't released a ton of material at the moment, but we've also been going through a lot of lineup changes. When we released our first record, we didn't even have a singer. We got a bunch of guest singers to come on and do things, and I even took up a few vocal parts myself, which I fully regret and still cringe at to this day.
So Shepherdess puts in here, just learned about Hell's Enemy. Now I got to look into more Christian music. Bummer. So
it's not explicitly Christian music. I'm just gonna toss it out there. It's none of it's anti-Christian. I wouldn't let that happen. That's not gonna be a thing.
Would you say that you're better than Nickelback? Because Chesterton's Fence needs a replacement.
Better than Nickelback. Depends upon what your measurement for goodness is. It's certainly more complicated than Nickelback. The production isn't as good. Chad Kroeger has an awesome voice, so we can't beat him there. Is certainly more intelligent than Nickelback. I can tell you that. Far more intelligent than Nickelback. Even Nickelback would admit that.
So crazy thing. I don't know if most people know this story about Chad Kroeger, but the dude was like seriously into like acting, and like he was like a Protestant, but like big into that whenever he was younger. He was always playing in the Christmas play, and he at one point played basically every position. When he was a baby, he was the infant Jesus. Whenever he got older, he was one of the angels, and then eventually Saint Joseph. But he never made it as a wise man. Sorry.
This interview is over.
Can you tell I have 5 children?
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. My drummer made me immune to. As a matter of fact, he's turned me into a dad joke connoisseur. So yeah, I appreciate it. I do. I should have seen that one coming, because it's not the first time I've heard that. It makes me so upset.
He just leaves. Nice.
But
okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you're complaining about Nickelback, then chances are, yes, my band is better than Nickelback. If that answers your question.
Nice.
We play faster than Nickelback. We have more time signatures than Nickelback. Our lyrics aren't just about drinking and whining about dumb things.
Yeah.
Hey, that sells a lot of records, man. I've been told that's worthy of respect. I don't know. Do you think it's worthy of respect, Kyle?
Of what? Selling more records?
Yeah.
I think it's worthy of money.
That's an outstanding answer. Yeah, it is worthy of money. I agree.
Respect is an entirely different conversation.
Yes. So. Yeah. I think again, our modernist infected West culture has really tainted the word respect a lot.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan.
Yeah, it's one of those things of like, the members of Nickelback have this net worth. I would say, yeah, they deserve all of that. Like they sold the records, they did the work.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So, okay. Okay, you just sent me this Spotify link. I'm gonna go ahead and post that in the live chat and remind me, and I will post that also in the description. So what is this Spotify link that I'm posting here?
That is to our artist page on Spotify.
Okay.
That'll give you the first track at the top there is called Betrayal. That's our latest single.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see a few other tracks from our first release, and then the little guy Pendulum there. It's also another standalone single.
Okay.
We're actually working on a new record right now. I took a little hiatus from the group because after my conversion, I really needed to reconsider what I'm doing with myself, and even if I should keep doing YouTube, because the impetus for me getting into it in the first place wasn't great. It wasn't the worst, but it wasn't great. That's really a whole other conversation in and of itself. But we just picked it back up. It was actually after talking to John, who we were referring to earlier. He was like, "You got to find more balance in your life, man." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm picking the axe back up." So our next record is going to loosely be based off of some of the life of our vocalist, who had like a ton of trauma happen in his life, and he struggled with disassociation. So we're making a little concept EP based around that, and probably going to include some demonic oppression or obsession in there as well.
Interesting. What does that mean? Like,
so if, the oppression part is when, if I remember correctly, the demon is actually like manifesting in things around you and like scratching you, biting you and stuff. And the obsession is when he's messing with you psychologically to where like you basically feel tortured from the inside. I don't have all of the strict definitions offhand, but that is loosely what each of those are. And we like, as we were writing this months prior before the hiatus, there was this giant God-shaped hole in the story. And like me and the vocalist are like working on this together, and he's also like incredibly Christian. So we were both like, but we don't want to like turn people off. We don't want it to be a Christian record. We don't want it to be this, and that. And after coming back, I said to him, let's just say it exactly like it is.
Yeah.
Let's not sugarcoat anything. Let's not worry about it. We're going to do our best to have it not be cheesy, you know? like not a literal Deus Ex Machina, you know?
Right. And I think that's how, like, originally you listen to some of the most beautiful music pieces ever put out in history, and a lot of it was propped up by the church. So, you know, and if you are singing about like demonic oppression and whatnot, like, my thoughts immediately go to, whenever I was in high school, I read Save Me From Myself by Brian Head Welch, the lead guitarist of Korn. Yeah, and like he even said like all of Korn's songs were singing about the lack of God's love in their life. So yeah, and I just got a text. I need to turn my turn it on to Do Not Disturb. So I don't know, like, do you have any thoughts on that?
It would make sense. I know Brian Welch is very Christian, and he even did a collab with one of those big Christian metal groups. I forget the guy's name. But yeah, I mean, the idea that most of the art made today for public consumption, that most of it is written as an absence of God's love, I think you could probably say yes, you know. All of that torture, all of that pain, all of that indulgence, all of that worship of self that they don't even realize that they're doing. You know, I think, yeah, you could definitely say that. What did he say? It was intentional that he did it that way, or is that like a post?
No, it was just like him looking back on it, like post conversion. He's just like, we were just singing about the lack of God's love in our life.
Yeah.
So
yeah. That sounds totally accurate to me.
Wow. Man,
are
you guys planning on going on tour sometime, or?
I would love to, but probably not anytime soon. Tour is very expensive, and I don't know. We need a larger following for me to even really justify that. You can create a following by going on tour, but you have to put all of that money up front. So it's like, you know.
Gotcha.
I already have an online influence that could garner enough fans to get us some listens. So let's just start there. You know,
Yeah.
the original plan.
Okay. Well, so I don't know if you knew this, but there's this Catholic Palooza, like a music fest for like Catholic artists, happening in New Jersey this year.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah.
One of the, I don't know what the heck happened to him. He disappeared. There's this dude named Joe who goes to my church, and he's awesome, and he told me about it. I might be interested. I don't know. I feel like there's probably just gonna be a ton of music there that I don't give a shit about. I'm super picky. So
Yeah.
my name on YouTube besides Become the Night is Mike the Music Snob, and I'm really really picky about what I enjoy, even from artists that I love. You know, so I don't want to run up there just to talk to a bunch of hippie Catholics. You know, I don't know.
Well, so I don't know. You've probably seen this. You've probably seen this trend where, like, if you say that it's Catholic or that it's Christian, it's like it's an excuse to be mediocre. You know, like I don't know if you've seen that because, like, you know, Jim Gaffigan has this thing where, you know, he was once described as family friendly, to which his response to that's like, well, that's effing insulting. Like, so I don't know. Do you think that's accurate, like in the music sphere?
To be Christian specifically?
Yeah, it's Christian. Like, is Christian synonymous with mediocre?
So I made a whole documentary looking at partly that question.
Oh,
yeah, it's a little 2-part YouTube documentary here. I'll get the link to that as well. It's one of the things I'm most proud of that I ever made. There's things I would change about it, but I think all in all, the main focus of the original concept was the people I was interviewing, and they absolutely carried it. There's part 1 in the chat.
oh my gosh, part 1.
So yeah, I would say that it's not only socially and culturally associated with mediocrity and art, but it also tends to be the case in reality. I don't think that that's because Christians aren't talented, but I do think that it's because the biggest reason, and this is me as well, the biggest reason people get involved in music is because they want social status and they want money. And like being an authentic Christian doesn't provide you those things. As a matter of fact, it tells you to shun those things.
Right.
So anyone who is an authentic Christian isn't going to be making Christian music because it comes with a lot more chains than what you'd realize. Pastors have a lot more say in what happens in Christian media than you would ever really consider.
Interesting.
Especially when it comes to like the Protestant side of things specifically.
Right. I recently learned that James White is like the official theologian for Skillet.
Explains a whole lot about why they're shallow as shit. Anyway. No, I'm messing around. James White is a really, really good debater, and he knows his theology really well. But I do love that. Oh man, the Jimmy Aiken debates with him. These last two. Mwah. Yes, Jimmy. Yes, Jimmy. Make James White prove that purgatory exists. Yes. But yeah, like, where was I going with that? Oh yeah. So on top of which, you have enough of a history of Christian media being filled with the people left over who couldn't make it in mainstream media. So now they're trying to play catch up and copy what's been working before. So it kind of just becomes like, in the documentary, my friend Steve was talking about Christian metal in particular. Very few, if any, of these artists had their own personalities. It was always like, well, what's the Christian version of Iron Maiden, or what's the Christian version of Slayer? You know,
it's whenever one becomes like the knockoff version, like Christian art used to be the highest form of it. Now it's the cheap imitation of the secular form.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Let me gather my thoughts here for a second. I even hesitate to call it Christian art in some ways, because the whole tradition of the Christian philosophy of music was actually aimed towards liturgy. Even when it came to most of the stuff that was composed during the classical period and the Baroque period, where you were getting a little bit more focus on the self, that was the artist doing self-expression, which was pulling it a little bit further away from that Augustinian philosophical tradition. So, I mean, that's why you can have chant snobs, like Gregorian chant snobs, being like, oh, that's not authentic liturgical chant, because there is a reason why that chant was specifically liturgical as opposed to the non-liturgical chant, which you could get away with a little bit more color. You were not supposed to be distracting people from God. That's okay. You want the number one thing that drove me away from the Novus Ordo? It was the freaking music, dude. Absolutely the music. I don't like going to Mass on Sunday and wondering whether or not God is offended by what's happening in front of me right now. Right. I don't think that's good. I don't think that's good at all. I think there is a lot of wisdom in the old chant tradition. And, I mean, especially if you take a look at the evolutionary history of music, it came from the voice. The voice is not only the like origins of it, but it's the most... the most elevating version of it. That's why when you have like the choirs of angels, it's always human voices. That's why when you hear the most mystical sounding music, there's usually some form of human voice in there, some form of chant. That is deeply rooted in our DNA, and the further you get away from that human voice, the more distracting it becomes. It can still be cool. I'm not saying that like any other music is bad. I'm just saying you got to be really careful what you start introducing at liturgy, because you can start tainting people's attention and perceptions of what worship actually is. So going back to the Christian artists, the only thing that's Christian about it is the fact that they talk about Jesus, maybe, you know, and that I don't think that's sufficient, because otherwise you're wearing around modernity as a skin suit.
It's kind of like that South Park episode, right, where they start a Christian rock band and they said all you got to do is just do the popular like love songs, but then replace baby and girl with Jesus and God.
Yeah,
and then boom, it's a hit Christian single or whatever.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So. Okay, so obviously I'm not a musician, so my thoughts are not near as developed on all of this, and I don't even know how to, whenever you say like, oh, we use more time signatures, I don't even have a trained enough ear to identify when that's happening. So my wife, however, she has a degree in sacred music, so she can absolutely 100% do it.
That's wonderful. Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, so it's funny. Are you familiar with the band The Classic Crime?
I'm not.
So they have a song called Four Chords, and I mean, I've
heard of Axis and Awesome's Four Chords, not Classic Crime though.
Yeah, so the Classic Crime, but it's anyway. So it's a song about basically like how simple music gets popular, and you know these four chords will keep me living on. So, but I showed this to a friend of mine that had a little bit more trained ear, and she goes, "That's funny because." There's like 8 chords in this song. So, but I don't know. Like the Classic Crime is a Christian band.
Word.
Huh? So, but sorry, I saw that you sent me on something on Discord. It's your
You're good. Yeah, no, it's the same
Spotify.
thing. Yeah.
So, but anyway, yeah. So, I don't know. Like, if you were to say, like, okay, if somebody's gonna go listen to a stereotypical like Christian band or like a whatever, like, what are the good ones out there? Do you know?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Nice.
There's a pretty decent one. They're not explicitly Christian, but they're called Teramaze. Teramaze's biggest problem, I think, is the fact, and this coming from a critic perspective, not an anything else, but their biggest problem is the fact that they are overproducing, in the sense of they have so much output that they don't take enough time to like sit back for a second and let the idea stew and really craft it the whole way to its fruition. But they're a progressive metal band from Australia, and they do have some Christian themes in their music every so often. They're quite good, quite good, very talented. Trying to think if there's anyone else I can remember offhand.
I don't know. Deuterocomical says August Burns Red is Christian, but also objectively good. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I don't know about August Burns Red. I don't know. Can you convince me that they're Christian? I've not paid attention to any of their lyrics whatsoever.
Oh, shots fired. So
I don't know. I mean, tell me how to. How do I understand? You know, I'm not. Some of my favorite bands do that, but I don't love them because of the lyrics. You know.
Yeah. So I'm enjoying the conversation, but I do want to kind of get it back on track to the.
You're good.
And who knows how long this is going to take? But okay, so you had a time of like agnosticism, almost atheism. What drove you to the almost atheism?
Mushrooms. It was literally mushrooms.
Okay, interesting.
I don't know exactly what it was, but something just hit me of all of this time I spent as basically a heathen, and nothing bad was happening. There's still a lot of good things happening. I was still happy, but I was, what do you call it? Basically getting more serotonin and dopamine through many different means. And it just hit me, you know, wouldn't so many more bad things be happening to me if God existed? That's like the best thing I could possibly recollect about it. It was so long ago. And it was during a mushroom trip. And I had to sit outside and like, fuck, I don't think God exists, you know? That changed for sure. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was like the catalyst for that.
Interesting. Huh. Okay, fascinating. So, I mean, obviously, it don't break any statute of limitations or, you know.
Yeah, very good.
Here. But, like, did you dabble much in drugs during, like, was this during, like, the musician phase, or was this prior to that? Like, place that on the timeline for me.
So, when I was in high school, I was introduced to marijuana in, I think, the beginning of my senior year. Or was it it was senior year, yeah. Beginning of my senior year. It was after a breakup with a girl who, thank the Lord, it was a breakup. But either way, yeah. So I was like, it was just like a few hits, and I was like, man, I'm smiling, but I don't know why. This is great, you know? Like, this is great. I love this. But like, I didn't like go buy it or anything. It was just like my friend introduced it to me. And then had a few more encounters with that, which were hilarious. They were amazing. Food tasted great. It tasted absolutely incredible. I was like, why is this illegal? You know? Then you eventually learn why. But yeah, so started off, I mean, I was drinking before then, but as far as like outside of alcohol, started off with marijuana here and there. And my sophomore year of college, I got way heavier into marijuana, like really, really bad. And I like dabbled here and there with a handful of other things. Like I tried like ecstasy like once or twice, like maybe like a few bumps of MDMA over the years. MDMA is actually pretty legit. I will say. I mean, I don't recommend doing it by any means, but like as far as the hard stuff goes, that's the one that dang camera. That's the one that I would say when done judiciously is has got a nice chill to it. But yeah, like even through college, I don't think I'd ever tried cocaine at all. So it was mostly marijuana. A handful of times in my life have I done mushrooms, and it was fun, but it forced me to be suspended from college. Got me in a lot of trouble. But that suspension from college was actually that's when I'd mentioned before about like that little spurt of my faith coming back. It was during that time.
Oh, okay.
I actually went to Crescio during that time.
What's that?
You're not familiar with Crescio?
Well, yeah, I'm totally familiar with it, but
I don't know. I thought it was nationwide. I don't know, but it's without spoiling it because there actually is spoilers to Crescio. It's basically a Catholic revival movement. You go on retreat for I think it's a couple days or a week or something like that, and then you come out and you're supposed to be ready to go be super Catholic. You know, it was a great experience. Both my parents did it, but yeah. So I still afterwards dabbled with marijuana after all of that, and then progressively over the years it just got less and less and less frequent to now I just don't consume it. It was actually, I remember specifically the moment. It had been a couple months since I'd smoked. I had reconverted, and this was like in December, and we were me and my friend George were wrenching on my car, having a great time on a Sunday. It was beautiful. I was having a beer or two, and our friend, other friend who I'm not going to name, was with us, and he's like, "Hey, I got a little bit of this stuff here. You guys want to take it?" Like, yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, sure. Like, you know, just a little liven it up a little bit, and lit it up. Took one hit off of it, and I instantly felt less connected with God. Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. So I'm never doing it again. Just like never ever. There's no like need for me to, and there never was. It was kind of just like spice it up a little bit, you know? And when that happened, I was like, yeah, I can't touch this stuff anymore, man. Like I don't have that problem when I drink.
Right.
I don't have that problem if I have like a pipe or a cigar or a cigarette, but the marijuana instantly made me feel, instead of trying to be more in touch out here, turned it back in on myself. It's like when I've heard, I think it was Matt Fradd, and might have been some other people too, refer to marijuana as kind of like a narcissistic drug. It makes you very inward focused, very self-focused. I didn't totally understand that until that moment when I was like, yeah, even though I'm not necessarily liking myself, because like I felt like some anxiety through that whole thing of just like negative emotions, and I just felt more down than I was before, where I felt more up. It focuses your attention on yourself, and that can manifest itself also as just indulgence, you know, whether you sit on the couch and play video games for hours or binge on horrible food for you, you know, or just like the sloth of watching a ton of shows back to back, or just taking junk media in, you know. And well, I also want to qualify all of that with, you know, marijuana acts differently with different people. I'm not going to say this as like an absolutely, it's always terrible and evil. No, that's not my position at all. It just really wasn't the right thing for me. Really not.
Yeah. Yeah. No, like it's interesting. I used to be like, I don't know. I've gone all over the place on the topic of marijuana. And like originally I was like hardcore. I mean, grew up in the Bible Belt, Oklahoma. Obviously I was naturally just completely against it.
Yep.
Then I took a little bit more of a libertarian approach to, hey, what you do in the privacy of your own home is none of my business. And like, I mean, 2018, I actually voted to legalize it whenever I was living in Missouri.
Word.
Which it got legalized, and now I couldn't go to like any public place without smelling it. So like that also changed my opinion on it, because it's just like, hey, this wasn't the deal. Like you people said you were going to do this at home, not blow it in my face. And
I mean, look at the pride parades, my friend.
yeah, for real. And but then like, okay, so that's just like, okay, no more. But then at the same time, I've got a buddy back in St. Louis. He said that like they grow it at their house because it's illegal it's legal in Illinois, like basically no holds barred. His dad had some degenerative disease, but then whenever he started smoking marijuana, also rest in peace to this video's chances at monetization.
Sorry.
It's okay. I don't make my living off of this. But he said his dad started smoking a little bit, and all of a sudden he went from being bound to a wheelchair. He went from that to now he's able to. He occasionally forgets his cane at home. So
wow.
like it's like, okay, so I can't just write this off completely, but obviously there has to be an element of temperance and prudence that's governing the use of this. So
the biggest thing that contributed to marijuana abuse was making it illegal, because you didn't normalize it at that point. You made it this underground cool culture that people wanted access to feel hip and different and cool and anti-authority, because anti-authority is baked into the American psyche since the revolution, you know. And like that was the reason why it's been abused, is because you have all of these immature assholes who are going to run around, pretend like they're really profound, writing for a weed magazine, talking about all this great stuff, but when in reality they're mostly irresponsible narcissists. And you have this weed culture of people being like, I've heard this so many times from friends of mine who are like, I tried weed a few times and I really didn't like it. I'm like, well, and I always say, well, tell me what happened. What were you smoking? How much of it did you smoke? And they were like, always, every time, the people who are being introduced to marijuana for the first time are being pressured to take more and more and more, because all the fucking pardon my language, all the potheads around them don't have any concept that it's new. It's a new drug you're introducing to someone's system. You don't know how they're going to react to it. You have no idea. Let them take a hit, maybe two, and let them chill. Don't keep passing them more stuff. You're going to make them feel terrible. You know, and like this extreme overindulgence is all because it was made illegal. I promise you that. We would have way more prudence with it if it was made legal and we had people talk about it more openly and it wasn't made such a stigma. And again, I'm not even trying to advocate for it. I'm just talking about the actual problem itself, you know?
Well, I definitely think there's some wisdom in that, because every single one of us knows somebody that used to be like a heavy drinker and then they turned 21 and then it just wasn't cool anymore. You know? So I think there's definitely something there. Though, I mean, I guess I got to give the disclaimer of like, I'm not going to endorse any of that because I'd have to think more on that. But I will say that like, there's definitely something there. Now, okay, so back on track. I didn't know where this interview was going to go. I wasn't expecting that.
I didn't either, so here we are.
Here we go. So, all right. So, okay, so you dabbled in like agnosticism, atheism that was seemingly like drug-induced. It
wasn't completely drug-induced. It was mostly me wanting to self-indulge myself induced. The mushroom part was less about like, oh, it made me an atheist, and more of it actually holding it like there's a really interesting thing with strong psychedelics. It holds a really uncomfortable mirror up to yourself. That in that way they can be very useful if used with a lot of prudence, very, very sparsely in specific circumstances. But that hard mirror up to myself was the fact that I was living like a fucking heathen and running around pretending like I still believed in God. That was the mirror that was held to me. It wasn't like the mushroom just like erased God from my brain. Those brain cells were killed, bro. No, it's not that. It's not that at all.
No, okay, that's interesting. So what did the return to faith look like?
I'm sorry, say that again.
What did the return to faith? What was that pathway for you?
Oh, very, very gradual over a long period of time. That's why it's even hard for me to define, because it was such a slow, not relentless. What's the word? Where you're trying to not go along with it. Either way, I really, really didn't want to go down this path, because that meant, like Matt had mentioned in several of his podcasts before, that meant I was going to be responsible for things in my behavior. I didn't want that. I like this dopamine. I like the serotonin. It's great. It's awesome. Money's amazing. So is sex. It's the best. So it was, like I said, with having. I think this actually ties really well into why we're seeing such a surge in people converting to Christianity, especially Catholicism and Orthodoxy. Because when tragedy strikes and you've been milquetoast your whole life, suddenly you have to decide what's real and whose side that you're on, because shit's about to go down and you're going to get hurt. So you need to band with people to stay safe. And if you die, you need to know where you're going.
Right.
So I think that forced a lot of people to really examine themselves. And like I said, it was that terrorist attack in France in 2000. Crap, I forget when. I think it was.
Did you talk about the Charlie Hebdo attack?
No, it was after that. This was right before the 2016 election. So I want to say it was 2015. Okay. There was a terrorist attack. It was it's either bombing or shootings. I forget.
I think that was a shooting. Like they were shooting into a crowd, and yeah. I think it was actually at a heavy metal show. That there was the Eagles of Heavy Metal or something like that, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
But that broke me out of my complacency into trying to figure out what's going on, because I live in Nashville, and even though it's not a massive city, it is a cultural hub. So if they weren't ballsy enough to take on like a DC or a New York City or an LA, this would be a happy middle ground to where it would like do some really serious damage culturally, and you still have enough bodies to actually take down that I was seriously considering that they might hit Nashville. And the way we're growing, we're just become more and more of a target every day. But that forced me to have to like follow news, and then as I was following news, I had to figure out, is this news real or not? So then that made me have to consider my political alignment, and by considering my political alignment, then you have to go down philosophy. So I was kind of going at it completely backwards, starting with like the current events, to the politics, to the philosophy, to the morality, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And it took many years to finally get down that road.
So you almost boiled your religious frog then, huh?
Yeah, in a sense, yeah. There was one specific circumstance I remember, and I don't know what the specific circumstances were, but I was driving home from downtown, and I was bawling in my car for some reason, and I got home, and I was just like basically crying and begging to God of like, look, I have no idea if you're real or not. Why should I run around pretending like I am doing something to serve something that might not even exist? Doesn't that seem kind of fucking stupid to you, And I'm like, if you are real, please, I'm begging you right now, just let me know, just give me some sign. And I don't remember exactly why I thought this, because like there was like a coincidence, a God incidence, if you will, that led up to this. But my brother texted me right back at that time, which he never does. He never does. Texted me right back, and we got on the phone, and that to me was like the big like, okay, he's real. There's no question now. I'm not agnostic any longer. I'm not gonna pick a religion because again that holds me responsible. But
yeah,
I know God exists.
Yeah. So, okay, so you went from at that point where it's like, okay, there's definitely a God. So, did that kind of launch you into your like your Catholicism versus Orthodoxy?
No, that took even more
Oh, okay.
years. I think I was still having some pretty good growth on YouTube at that time. Yeah, that was all pre-COVID. Yeah,
Okay.
COVID. Okay, right before COVID, I was at probably like my peak popularity, if you will, and I just dropped a video on this guitar YouTuber named Rob Chapman, and that's a whole. We don't need to go into all that detail, but it was right before the NAMM conference. That's NAMM. That's the National Association of Music Merchants. For musicians and content creators, that's like a big thing to like. It's like a rite of passage to get invited to this. Like you finally matter if you get invited to this, which like you don't actually matter if you get invited to that. You just matter slightly more than you did before. But
It's like getting invited to the Catholic Creator Conference.
yeah, except a lot more heatheny over at the over at NAMM.
Okay.
Lot more focus on self-indulgence. But yeah, so I think it was either my first or second time going to LA NAMM, if I remember correctly. But I went there. I had this big video drop that was like I shouldn't say a big expose, but it was a very well watched and circulated video in the guitar community specifically. So my name was hot going into NAMM, and this guy who I dropped also was a person who makes guitars, and he was at NAMM with his product, and I didn't go to confession for it, and I didn't even know if I had to technically go to confession for it, but I did like a month or two ago because it came back up. If you watch the video, I didn't slander him. I didn't try to destroy him or anything, but I definitely wasn't doing it with a pure heart the entire time, even though I was helping out a smaller YouTuber by doing it. It was not unwarranted in the sense of like this guy did something wrong. He's running around bullying smaller creators. It's not a good thing.
Yeah.
But the time in which we did it and the potential fallout to him, I don't know if it was the right thing or not. Me and the other creator who invited me to do it in the first place literally didn't sleep the night before the video dropped, and we had to go fly out on planes to LA that morning. So yeah, it was difficult dealing with that. But so that's going down. I get to NAMM, and I'm meeting all of the right people that you want to meet as a music, metal, guitar, YouTube creator, you know.
Sure.
I'm meeting Jared Dines in person for the first time. I'm meeting all these other like big metal YouTubers, and there's all these like cool like private hangouts. Which this is my second time at LA NAMM, because I remember specifically the pool bar. That's a inside reference that I can't explain. But yeah, I'm there, and I'm kind of realizing that there's this, what's the word? Starts with an M. Crap. It's when you're trying to achieve something, or when you're trying to have like a big legacy, or starts with an M. Shit. Crap. No, it's not M. It's an A. Ambition. Sorry.
Ambition. Oh yeah. Yeah, I was just like M. That completely threw me off.
Sorry. Yeah, it's
all good.
It's,
it's all
my
good.
dyslexia working in my favor. I had this great ambition to try and like get to know people and make all these connections and make a good impression. And I was realizing as I was going through all this, I really don't like how I'm acting and what my internal intuitions are telling me as far as wants or like how I'm emotionally responding to certain interactions. And I actually emailed a good friend of mine, Anthony Vincent, who's 10 Second Songs, about this afterwards, because he's been through all of this. He's been through all that like super extreme fame and virality, like real virality, not this fucking junior version that I'm dealing with. And Anthony helps ground me quite a lot, and that's a key point where I had to start really reevaluating why I was doing anything I was doing with my YouTube channel. I would never say that I was ever dishonest with my audience in the sense of like I'm pretending to sell them this ideal, but really secretly I don't believe any of this stuff. Like no, I believed a bunch of the stuff I was talking about, but it definitely was much more internally from a self-serving point of view than it was from actually trying to fully just speak the truth. And that's where I had to really reevaluate all of what I'd been doing on YouTube, and that was just before the lockdown. So that was probably another key moment in my lead up to reconversion. Really having to sit down and be a lot more honest with myself about what I'm doing and why. So I don't go down a path of I don't know what the word is. Man, I'm usually way better and way more verbose with this. I don't know why I feel so unprepared. I feel terrible.
It's okay. This is a small channel that nobody watches, so if you're gonna flounder, this is the place to do it.
Okay, that's good.
So, okay, so I guess would it be fair to say that this was almost kind of like a crisis of non-faith? Like almost like it's just like that really like a really retrospective moment or introspective moment where you're just like, okay, what am I doing here?
No, I think it might actually be an actual crisis of faith. Because now you're making me remember. One of these big TV shows that had a huge impact on me philosophically was Babylon 5 of all TV shows.
That's the only time I've ever heard that show referenced. I thought only my parents watched that. Okay, all right.
I love Babylon 5, dude. It's my favorite show.
Okay,
love it. So a lot of that has to do with these kind of like the Jungian substrates of truth and blah blah blah. Like, thank you, Jordan. Thank you so much. Yeah, but I did believe that God was truth. That's something that's been pounded into me for a long time, and a whole lot of that was kind of propagated through Babylon 5 as well. But yeah, so I wanted to be in alignment with that for sure. I didn't know what that looked like specifically religiously, but I knew that integrity was a massive part of that. Integrity and not being completely self-serving and trying to serve others. So that stuck with me. So in that sense, you could call it a crisis of faith, even though it wasn't a really mature faith. But yeah, I think that's thank you for asking that question, because that dislodged that from my brain.
Well, I don't mean to brag or anything, but I'm kind of a really good interviewer. That's why my following is so big. No. Okay. Well, okay. Cool. So you had this. So where does that leave you now? Because you're going from like, okay, you're really introspective. You're like, what am I doing? Am I doing it for the right reasons? Like, now what?
That leads to my channel getting way less views than it used to for absolutely no foreseeable reason.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah, like it just mystically I shouldn't say completely disappeared, but something happened with the algorithm to where the videos that used to work didn't work as well as they used to. Some of them didn't work at all as far as like actually being served to my audience. I despise, I shouldn't say I despise, because I love that my fans care, but I despise YouTube for when my fans leave me, man, I thought you stopped uploading. I haven't seen one of your videos pop up in months. Like, I've been doing this every week, man. I've been doing this every week. I don't know what to tell. I don't know what to tell you, and I'm sorry it's not being served to you. But YouTube. Okay, so me and my friend Finn McKenty have been friends for a few years now, and we have been for years debating on like what is it that makes a video do poorly? Is it the algorithm or is it the audience? And it's a mix of both at the end of the day, but which one has more pull? And he's always been more on the side of the audience. I've always been more on the side of the algorithm.
Okay.
And after finally like sharing a bunch of this stuff with Finn, he's like, yeah, you know what? I think you're the one case where the algorithm just hates you. It just hates you. It didn't used to. I used to be an algorithm darling. It was great. I loved it. But seems like around that time is when that hit. Was like right at lockdown. Right at lockdown. Not only was like the whole world questioning whether or not we were gonna make it out alive, but also my channel started being very unpredictable, and it's been strictly unpredictable ever since. That also eventually led me to the crisis of faith thing. You know, why am I doing this? Why am I pouring all of my time and energy into this as if I need to sacrifice? Who am I sacrificing this to? I'm sacrificing it to myself. I'm sacrificing it to YouTube. What the heck does YouTube deserve my sacrifices for?
Whoa.
You know?
Okay, hold on. Who am I sacrificing this to? That's not a question I think I've ever like asked or even pondered before, but that, you know, I've gotten into this distinction between, you know, Protestants, you know, they say prayer is worship. What is worship? A lot of misinformed Catholics will say that worship is only sacrifice, which is just not accurate. But
okay, hold on. Hold that thought, because I want to get another beer, and I might challenge you on that. Hold on.
Okay, all right. Well,
We're back.
in the meantime, I will keep. I will indulge the audience on Babylon 5. So, yeah, Babylon 5. You guys, I didn't know that my parents weren't the only people who watched that, because the only time in my life that I was watching Babylon 5 was whenever I was like...
One second, I can't hear you.
No, you're fine. I'm talking to the audience. The only time I was ever watching Babylon 5 is...
Right.
Sorry, I was just talking Babylon 5 with the audience.
Yes.
Yeah, the only time I've ever seen that was like less than 10 years old.
Moon-faced assassin of joy.
So now I'm going to have to go rewatch it as an adult. So
Heck yeah. Heck yes.
Okay.
I have every season purchased on YouTube.
Okay, well then. All right. So worship is always sacrifice, but that doesn't mean that worship is only sacrifice. Does that make sense?
Maybe.
So prayer can be worship, just like singing can be worship, but it isn't always worship. Does that make sense?
Okay, that I agree to. Yeah.
Yeah. So some people will say that it's only worship if there's sacrifice involved, which I disagree.
I think there's a debate to be had there. Like, we want to go back to the Jewish tradition on all of this, right?
Okay.
I'm not saying I have like all the examples, because I'm not amazingly well read on the Old Testament, but as far as I'm aware, at least from the old stuff, any of the worship involved did involve a sacrifice. I could be incorrect though.
So Father Jeremiah Han's in the chat, and he goes, "I'm watching this stream time. Babylon 5. Hey, this is awesome. A friend showed it to me. Apparently, I'm the only one who hasn't seen it as an adult, and I thought I was also the only person who had ever heard of it. Okay." Okay, so
Babylon 5 is the best.
I forgot where I was going.
We were talking about worship and sacrifice.
Yeah. So, and my
actually,
wife.
if there's a priest in here, I'd love to get the priest take, since he does both worship and sacrifice.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, actually, so I've actually talked with him. So Father Jeremiah is a good friend of mine, and we've actually talked on this very subject.
Hi, Father.
So, that's why I called him Father and not just Jeremiah. But anyway, so my wife's in the chat too. Is Babylon 5 a good series to watch with the wife? So,
yeah.
From what
how nerdy is your wife?
Very, very.
Oh, okay, then yes.
So, like,
okay.
one of her favorite shows growing up was also Stargate. So, like...
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, I also love Stargate. SG-1's the best.
Yeah, so she's a Trekkie, too, so...
So season 1 is super cheesy, and, like, they had a lot of input from the studio, WB, trying to be like, oh, it needs to be more like this because monster of the week, blah blah blah. And the creator of the show is like, okay, like if I incorporate a few of these things, will you just shut up and go away, please? But season 2 onward, they gave him free reign. So like it like season 1's still like okay at spots, but it also is kind of shitty and cheap at spots. Season 2 onward is like, oh, delish. Really, really good. Season 5 kind of sucks, but it's whatever.
Wesley Novak is asking, does watching season 1
count as penance? No, but watching the telepath arc, we will all come together in a better place. That's penance. That's penance right there.
Oh wow, Mel is over here with like the sick burn. Babylon 5 looks like Galaxy Quest, but they weren't joking.
Yeah, okay, sure, but it was 1993. Come on. It was the first television show to weekly have CGI in every episode. They were pioneers, okay? It's like saying, oh, reboot looks like something I would have done in 20 seconds on Blender. It's like, yeah, it was freaking the 90s, dude.
He says excuses. Okay. All right, cool. So we're not getting this interview back.
Yeah, it's great.
Dude, we're having a great time. So, like, I don't know. Obviously, you know YouTube better than I do, but a lot of my things is like, listening to these bigger creators, and one of the things are like, as long as you're having a good time, you're heading in the right direction. I'm having a great time right now.
Yeah, it's fabulous. As long as I hope I'm not boring you or your audience. That's the only thing. I
mean, no, not me. And for them, whatever. They're adults.
Screw them. What has your audience done for you?
To all 13 of you presently watching, I love you. Thank you for your support. If you want to support me more, go check me out on Locals. Also, I've got a merch store if you want to get like this sweet shirt. Actually, you know what? Do you want to do a shirt swap? I'll send you one of my shirts. You send me one of yours.
I don't know what shirts I could give you other than like our band. I'll happily give you some band merch. Dude, any of my Become the Night stuff. First of all, I don't know. I need to figure out my merch game. I'm terrible I'm horrific at merch. But
come to the Catholic Creator Conference. We'll have people talking exactly that. So
yes, but also this is all focused on like metal memes and crap. I don't know how many people are into that. But I'll happily give you one of our band tees if you
Dude, that's like a sick shirt, honestly. Like, I was actually like, whenever you said, of course, I'm saying this in front of my wife now, so this is kind of awkward. I was already thinking, like, dude, there's like 4 people that would like that shirt around here. So, like, I was thinking, like,
sick.
Dude, I'm gonna order some of those so that way I can give them around town here.
I'll bring some up then.
Dude, absolutely do that because we're gonna have people here. They're all gonna be interested. It's gonna be a great time. Okay, so I know toward the beginning of the interview we talked about you were kind of thinking Catholic orthodoxy. How did you get to that point?
So being broken down by the algorithm sucking for me anyway, and getting after this last round of inflation, being like, crap, I don't know if I can keep doing this as a full-time job anymore. It's been crap, like 6 years now. Yeah, 6 years full-time YouTube. Wow. And this last round of inflation is the thing that's finally going to be maybe taking me out. So I had to really consider, am I done or what do I do next? And I was going to pray to God about it. And then I really thought to myself, even if I do pray to God about it, I don't trust that I'm going to be able to hear him right. So I was like, yeah, now's the time I need to get right with God. And not get right with God so that he blesses me with all the things from heaven. Although that would be amazing if you do that, just saying. But so I make sure that whatever, because this is a big decision. It's a huge decision. Especially if I do want to have a family, you know? That's that's something that needs to have God brought into it.
Yeah.
So yeah, no running away from him anymore. I had to get that figured out. And of course, after you have that thought to yourself, you put it off for a little longer because you're used to putting it off. And it was that final moment at the family reunion that kind of turned me around. During that time, in between the family reunion and that moment where I was like, yeah, I gotta ask God what decision happens next. That's when I started messing around a little bit with the orthodoxy thing, specifically because I knew a lot of our church got kind of modernized and liberalized. A lot of the tradition was gone, or at least it appeared to be gone for me.
Sure.
Not that it's actually all gone, or
Right.
or even that the Novus Ordo doesn't have its own tradition rooted in it,
Mm-hmm.
But from my outside perspective at that point, I was like, yeah, I don't know. It just seems like junior Protestant almost to a degree in some ways. And I knew the Byzantine, so I was like, let's check out the Orthodox, because also my libertarian intuitions was that it would be better suited decentralized, similar to how the Orthodox do things. I thought I was thinking to myself that that's probably one of the reasons that there's corruption in the Catholic Church, is because of how it's set up. It's like primed for corruption. But I didn't really understand how the structure of the church really works. So that was, again, due to my ignorance. But yeah, so I was toying with the Orthodoxy for a little bit, just a little bit. I went to like 2 divine liturgies, and talked to my friend Brandon about it. He gave me that. Well, I bought the book on Audible, but yeah. So that's kind of where they started jockeying for one another in my brain. Was Catholicism and Orthodoxy.
Okay. So you said that earlier you mentioned how Catholicism just seemed to be the most consistent. Was there any particular thing that seemed to tip the scales into like identifying that was the consistent one?
I'm trying to think. Pardon me. Mm-hmm. I went through a crap load of videos during that time, like tons and tons and tons of videos. So I'm trying to think of like which one in particular. Well, okay. So we're talking about the Trinity and the Filioque.
Sure.
It definitely, especially when I was hearing the same argument come from some of our Protestant brothers and sisters as well, it made more sense from the Father and the Son, just on like a face value kind of thing, because we have to admit before we ever pretend to define the Trinity that we're not going to be able to use any amount of human language to properly define it or circumscribe it, because if we do, then he's not God. Plain and simple. Logically, that has to be the case. So we're going to have to make some sacrifices somewhere. So if the Orthodox believe the same as we do, which they do, that the Holy Spirit is the product of the love between, not just the product of, it is the love between the Father and the Son. The lover and the beloved is the love between them. That is the Holy Spirit. We agree on that, right? Okay. So it's like, well, but then that doesn't make the Father the font head. Well, I mean, you're already, without having to change the verbiage, you're already conceding that case. If you think that it's the product of the love between the Father and the Son, not just one way, but both ways, then you're already conceding that case, and you're quibbling about bullshit. That's one part where I feel like Catholicism is more logically consistent. That, and also just like Peter specifically. I mean, there has been allegiance, not just allegiance to Peter and to Rome, but deference to, and also at a time when Rome didn't used to swing its weight around as much as it does now, or even in the last like 1,000 years, I would say. Yeah, like there's a lot more deference to Rome from everyone, except for the Coptics for whatever reason. But yeah, like that was the way history was. And then they were like, but no, it was Rome that left. Like, they were at the top, dude.
Yeah,
It's like saying, no, we didn't desert. Our general stayed behind. No, you left.
yeah, it's whenever you look at the pie chart of what all Christians are, it's like 52% Catholic, like what is it, like 38% Protestant, and then 12% Orthodox, right, or something along that line. And it's just like the tiny sliver of the pie chart is saying the rest of them left. And I put a lot of stock into St. Francis de Sales because I'm a stereotypical Westerner.
If I can pause you really fast, I think there's an argument to be made there if you can trace it the whole way back to the beginning, like actually trace it. And there's a little bit of argument there with the Orthodox, more so than the Protestants. That's for darn sure.
Sure.
But even still, yeah. I mean, without leaning on the appeal to majority fallacy, I mean, yes, there's something to acknowledge in what you're saying. Yeah.
Right. So, but what I'm saying, like, Jesus promised us that, we are a city on a hill, a light which cannot be hid. The church must be visible. There is no such thing as like this invisible church. Also, the church must be apparent to both the beggar and the scholar. Just, you look around, the Protestants, we only get they occasionally get me, which is a Protestant clown, but like, they never get our best ones. We get their best. They only like get our worst. So like, okay.
I wanna say that you're right, but I haven't seen enough of it myself to confirm. I mean, I'm not gonna ask you to bring up examples because I feel like that would be very not Christian to do.
Sure. Well,
here's all the worst Catholics that became Protestant.
Well, it's one of those things of every time you hear people say, I used to be Catholic, you hear their experience, and it's just like, wow, you had absolutely no idea, like, what we actually believed. Like, clearly, you didn't actually know what was going on, or, Mike Gendron is the one
that does seem to be my experience when I encounter it in the wild,
Yeah. And it seems like if you meet really intelligent ex-Catholics, they're Orthodox. So, like...
Or either that or they're atheist.
Yeah, that too. Like, especially, like, former priests. My goodness. Well, I mean, like, even the Orthodox aren't immune to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, the PhDs don't ever go Protestant. So, but anyway... So with the Orthodox there too, like as a child of the West, the only way that I could possibly end up Orthodox is if I dedicated a ton of study to it. I would have to get on that scholar level. The beggar doesn't have a shot at finding the Orthodox Church.
Do you think so?
I don't think so, especially in the West. Here, absolutely not.
Well, I mean, I don't know. My friend Brandon, I don't know how. This is my Orthodox friend.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how deeply he is into the theological stuff. Like, he knows his theology pretty well.
Sure.
But if I had to guess, he probably doesn't go quite as deep into it as I do. I could be wrong. I could be very wrong. He might just not know the Catholic stuff as well as I do. He still wound up choosing Orthodoxy. Initially, he was with, I want to say it was like some type of like Pentecostal charismatic thing.
Regardless, a massive step up from where he previously was.
Oh yeah. I mean, he was atheist for a long time. Okay. Then Orthodoxy.
Gotcha.
So,
yeah. I don't want to speak too much on Orthodoxy because I'm still learning, the East, quite frankly. But I guess if there's something like, why aren't you Orthodox? It's like, well, it seems a little too obscure that you start like leaning more into Gnosticism and Pelagianism, to where you have to be smart enough, or you have to have this special character, or you have to do enough work in order to arrive here. Meanwhile, this dumb kid in Oklahoma, the grace of God was enough to reach me. So I don't know, and maybe I'm wrong.
I haven't been familiarized enough with the deep theology of Orthodoxy to know whether or not I even, like, that's my perception of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can tell you based upon the loose aesthetics, not only of the interior of the churches, but also of the people and how I interact with them. Loosely, it seems like maybe there's more emphasis on the mystical in the East, and there is a there definitely seems to be a larger emphasis on logic in the West.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
The I think that's where the Pope was talking about the two lungs that you breathe with. You know, it's very easy to demystify things when we're trying to do logical proofs and objective observations, empirical testing of things. It's very easy to lose the mysticism when you get too far into that. That's where we get the modernist and the atheist and materialism. What do you say, Kyle? How would this criticism not fit for Catholic? Which criticism?
So the criticism that like the Orthodox are too obscure, I assume. I'm guessing. So here's how I do it.
I mean, we are the majority Christian religion on the planet.
Exactly, and we're still the largest group. Whenever I was converting, even though I didn't like the Catholics, I still very much knew about them. One of the big reasons why I'm not Orthodox is because, quite frankly, whenever I started taking my faith seriously, the only time I'd ever encountered the Orthodox Church was in my big fat Greek wedding. That's the only time that I ever heard about it. It wasn't until actually last month that I found out that that there was an Orthodox church near where I lived. I did not know that. So that's why it's but I mean, here in the West, everybody knows about the Catholic Church. Whether or not you approve of them is a different matter, but it's still very much visible.
Undeniably, yeah.
Yeah. So, so cool. So I got some audience questions.
Sure, let's do it.
If you've got some time here. So I doubt if any of these guys are. So what's your favorite time signature?
I have no idea. The one that feels the best to me in the moment. I have no clue. 7/8's great. 6/8's great. 4/4 is wonderful. Even though Prague people, it's the meme to crap on 4/4, but I mean 4/4 is the fundament of it all.
Okay.
If you think about the normal resting heartbeat is 60 beats per minute, and double that is 120 beats per minute, which is kind of like the joke of it's in 4/4 at 120 beats per minute. It's all divisible by fours, so it's all very precisely timed and unified in that way, which is also what makes it feel very safe. And also it goes into the rhythm of the resting heart rate. So yeah, that's that in itself, I think, points to it being good. But I mean, it's also we don't need to get into the deep parts of time signatures. Anyway, there's
the part that my wife would geek out about. So
maybe we'll see.
Yeah,
that he was so full of crap.
So, what are your top 3 favorite non-metal bands?
Billy Joel, the Beatles, and I have to think about the third one, but definitely Billy Joel and the Beatles are top up there. Wow. That third spot I have to really consider for a second.
Okay, it's interesting because I don't think highly of the Beatles at all. Their music is very bland to me.
Well, I mean, it's very bland because it's okay. So I had this problem with Jimi Hendrix. So Jimi Hendrix is widely considered to be the greatest modern guitarist of all time for a bunch of reasons that are very good arguments. And I always thought people are so freaking stupid. Why is there all this Hendrix worship? Blah 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 blah. And then when you actually do the music genealogy, the music history of it all, much of it starts with Hendrix as far as this cultural explosion of guitar and of the solo performer, the virtuoso, but then also this extreme expression, this level of distortion on the guitar. There's a lot of things that start with Hendrix, and Hendrix has his footprint in so many different genres today that it's okay, I get the argument now. The problem is I didn't start with Hendrix. I started with so many of his predecessors that are way more interesting than he is. And I think that's kind of the Beatles argument I would levy on you. You started with all of the people that were touched by the Beatles and now you're trying to work your way backwards. And you're like, well, this is bland and terrible and stupid. And like, okay, yeah, I can completely see that perspective. So like,
Gotcha.
that makes sense. I think if you started with the Beatles earlier, you'd probably have a different perspective on it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and there was, I don't know. I saw one of my friends once posted on Facebook that he said that the only reason that the Beatles were popular is because they started making music at a time where women were allowed to be horny. So
That's not the only reason, but that's certainly a contributing factor for sure.
So I said that deep enough into the interview. So hopefully, like, the only people, like, I shouldn't get in trouble by that comment. But okay. So your Spotify says prog metal. Thoughts on the band Coheed and Cambria?
Okay. Used to be a meme on my channel. That I'm sick of people giving me like thoughts on X band, thoughts on Korn, thoughts on Nirvana. You know, it's like the thing that I would get every single time. I'm not actually upset with this question at all, Leggett. So just heads up, but that's the only reason why I'm laughing about it. So thoughts on even coming here over to the Catholic side, thoughts on X band still is a thing that happens. Coheed's great. I'm not a massive fan. They're extremely talented. Claudio Sanchez's voice is really, really beautiful, instantly identifiable. They can be really, really good melody writers, but I think sometimes they get a little bit up their own ass, just slightly, when it comes to. I mean, that's a problem with 90% of prog, so it's not like unique to them. Their mixes can be hit or miss for me. I think it's really cool that they started their own comic book series to go along with their albums, and that they founded their own record label. I think that's all really cool. In the grand scheme of things, I would consider myself pro Coheed and Cambria. And it's actually funny. There's a number of people who think that some of our stuff sounds like it was influenced by them, and I can tell you for sure it wasn't. So I think that's really interesting.
So I've got this bit that I'll do whenever somebody like tries to like show me some music, new music or whatever. When the music starts, just to be a jerk, I'll go, "Oh, dude, I love Creed." So what would be the most insulting thing for you if your music started playing and somebody goes, "Oh, dude, I love so and so"?
Are we talking about someone who is being genuine or just being an asshole?
Yeah, if somebody genuinely said, "I think your music sounds like this," and you're like, "That's the worst thing you could have said."
Give me a second. I'm shuffling through some bands here. So I've gotten some of these comments.
Oh no. It's a little close to home.
I don't know. It's fine. It's fine. I'm trying to think of which one it is. Crap. I couldn't.
I mean,
I'm trying to think of like a realistic comparison here. The closest
dude,
thing
I love Lizzo.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but no one's ever going to say that. Right. The closest one I can think of offhand was Avenged Sevenfold, which I wasn't actually offended by. I was very surprised by, because I'm like, I don't think it sounds that much like Avenged Sevenfold, you know. and I don't listen to much Avenged Sevenfold either, you know. Like I mean, I'm familiar enough with their catalog, but it's not something that like makes a home in my brain at all. Yeah, the closest thing for now would have to be Avenged Sevenfold, but I wouldn't actually be offended by it. Let's put it that way.
Gotcha. So is Become the Night becoming a KFC, a Night of Columbus?
No KFC for me. At least not in the near future. If anything, I would probably join like we have a Carmelite third order secular group over here in Liberty, Tennessee. In the middle of nowhere. It's really, really, really beautiful. We got these great, and when I say Carmelite, it's not discalced Carmelites. It's not strictly John of the Cross and Teresa of Avila. Although I'm sure that's integrated into it. It actually comes from the Indian Carmelites, the CMI. It's Carmelites of Mary Immaculate. So we have like, because the United States is a mission country. It's now considered a mission country. We have a priest shortage. So they're sending priests from every other country but America to fill in our gaps. We have a bunch of Indian priests here in Nashville.
Right.
And thank the Lord, because they're absolutely wonderful. Every single one of them, I love them. They're amazing. Especially shout out to Father Shinto. Father Shinto is the man. Love him so much. This tiny little man with the biggest smile in the entire world. Oh my gosh, Father Shinto is the best. Okay, there's a Father James out in Liberty, Tennessee, who is one of these Carmelite priests, and he kind of started nesting this Indian version of the Carmelites, the CMI, out here. So I would consider doing that probably before it would be Knights of Columbus or something like it. Maybe even like Opus Dei or something, you know?
Okay. Awesome.
No offense to Knights of Columbus.
Yeah, no, man, you said something made me think about something, but I will. Oh, remind me after the interview ends. I've got some funny stories about some foreign priests that I cannot share publicly. But
Okay.
so what's your shtick? What's your goal as an online personality?
So that's been evolving over the years. Initially, it was the name Become the Night was kind of a weird way of trying to make what could be an artist title name, like Become the Night, like on Spotify, which is on Spotify. And also bore it into some type of principle that would be like a guiding mission, and that guiding mission was integrity. Trying, and the become part was the fact that it's something that I knew that I could be much stronger in, and I need to continue working at. So the knight being like the chivalry aspect of it, of like always being good to your word, and yeah, that's where the name Become the Knight comes from. But as far as the goal was to build an audience for my music, but then, you know, most people aren't really into prog, so I imagined I would have to educate a bunch of people on that as well, which that has happened, not as broadly and as a high a volume as I wanted, but yeah, I mean, there's most people who are like fans of me were people who have been learning music and about music and how to listen to music from me. For good or for ill, you know.
You strike me as the kind of guy that like the critical drinker online, but for music. Like, I don't know, if you take that as a compliment, because like,
no, critical drinker.
For me,
awesome,
it's like I don't actually watch these movies. I just get all of my opinions from him. So, which means that whenever I talk about movies, I sound like I know what I'm talking about. So I can be a movie snob without actually having to watch movies. It's great. So, yeah, sounds like
I understand.
You're the musical critical drinker. So,
when it comes to that specifically, because I don't normally watch movies very much, mostly because I feel like it's such a high investment for something that might be a complete waste of my time. I might not get enriched by it, and if I'm not getting enriched by it, I could be spending that time doing something else. So, similarly with what you're doing, you get the digest from other people. Mm-hmm. Instead of saying that it's my opinion, when I talk about it with other people, I say, I have heard that, da 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 da. So I distinguish that it is not my opinion.
Yeah. I still think I'm a fan of passing it off as my own original thought. No, so what's funny? So, have you seen James Donald Forbes McCann on Pints with Aquinas?
Not.
He's the Australian comedian.
Yes.
So
yes, I have.
He was in Steubenville for a little bit, and we got to hang out quite a bit. He's hilarious. Like that energy, he's like exactly how you'd expect him to be off camera, except maybe a little bit more toned down.
Okay.
But one of the ways that I'm funny is that I watch obscure comedians and I steal their jokes and I use them in private settings, and it's fine. He's one of those comedians that I watch. And there was one time whenever he was at my house.
No.
And we were talking about cricket, and I just barely stopped myself from reciting one of his jokes back to him. And it was he was talking about cricket, and I was this close to saying, you know, I think cricket was invented solely to annoy people who don't watch cricket. And it was just like, and then I made the connection fast enough. I was like, that's his joke. I got that from him. Although whenever I said that to him, he goes, was that my joke? Because he's got so many.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. Like, as a person who talks way too much online, people are like, yeah, I remember the time that you said this. I was like, I said that. Crap.
If you were offended,
that one
I'm
at least
sorry.
sounded okay. I don't want to know the other stuff that I've said.
If you're offended, I'm sorry. If you thought it was funny, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Do you mind if I take like a 3 minutes? I need to use the restroom really fast.
yeah, sure. Here, I'll go ahead and pull you off the screen here.
Cool.
So okay. Howdy y'all. There's 11 of you here. If you've got some what is this? Kyle almost had an Amy Schumer. Oh, or a Dane Cook, because Dane Cook was also really notorious for stealing jokes, and that's what ruined his career. Yeah, thankfully, I don't make my career being funny, so it's great. I guess also since we're like almost 2 hours in, I feel like you guys are in it for the long haul, so I do really appreciate all of you coming, like sticking along for this. I will take this, I guess, as a chance to do a little bit of an ad read, and that is, I've got my local set up. I do have the goal of trying to do this full time. Obviously, at 4,000 subscribers, not a very realistic goal right now. It's pretty long way off, but the only way that you can get to that point is by slow incremental changes. So support on locals really does go a long way. I'm able to invest that money right back into the channel, make improvements and whatnot. So as you guys can see, like I'm currently sitting in a room that is not my house. This is it's actually my office that I work in for my full-time job, but it's not the house. There's a lot of improvements that could be done, and any and all support on locals goes to support that. So for those of you who do support, I'm incredibly appreciative. There are I am currently running a I guess a campaign to get more supporters. Is I'm going to send you a free handmade mug. I'm not even going to make you pay shipping. So these are actually made by a local artisan here in Steubenville. They look a little different than the old ones because these are like actually authentically handmade, even the logo and everything. So yeah. So if you want to support the channel, kylewhittington.locals.com. And it looks like Michael's back. So
Hey,
yeah,
that mug looks sick, dude.
You know what? I'll send you home with one whenever you come up here.
Thank you.
So
I greatly appreciate that.
Yeah. So and for those of you who have signed up,
I should have been drinking my beer out of my PWA mug this whole time.
Nice.
Really showing my cred.
Yeah. I should probably bring one. I've got like 2 of them at home, but for those of you who did sign up on those, I have not forgotten. I'm just terrible at mailing things out, but believe me, whenever I say it has weighed heavily on my conscience ever since. Anyway, so I actually just have one question left from the audience. So if you guys have any more, feel free to post them up. But Shepherdess, aka Mel, she's also in my Discord server. So, what is your favorite or one of your favorite songs you've made so far, and why?
So there's a choice between 3.
Okay.
Betrayal is one of my favorites just because it's the thing that I listen to and don't cringe at, which is like a huge accomplishment for a musician.
Oh, okay.
I don't cringe at it at all. I think it's a really good production. It's a great composition. It's really well thought out. The weakest part about it might be some of the lyrics because they don't clearly state what's going on, but I don't think it really needs to. The whole vibe of that song hits, I would say, front to back. Some people might think that the intro takes a little bit more time than what is popularly acceptable, which is, I mean, it's prog, you know. But so on that hand, I would say that one. Mm-hmm. Another one would be like my own solo release under Become the Night. It's called Won't Be Saved. It has over 1 million streams on Spotify, and that's all organic. I didn't push that super hard or anything. Yeah, that was all algorithm based. Spotify shoving that out to people and people coming back and listening to it. The production on that is horrendous. It's terrible. It's an embarrassment, but that writing and those performances came from an incredibly real place at a time where I felt really crappy. And I Jordan Peterson the audience. So I took what I saw was the invasion and subversion of America by a bunch of socialists, and I reinterpreted that into poetic language and coded it with some little words here and there so that anyone who knows how to decipher the code knows what I'm talking about, but anyone else probably wouldn't. And it touched on, I think, a broader story that is some form of oppression or hunting by a hungry force who just wants to destroy things. I'm actually really, really happy with how those lyrics came out. Those are probably some of the best lyrics I've ever written. Even though it sounds super cheap and the performances are kind of but it's a well written song all in all. And that was all done soup to nuts from nothing to published in a week.
Wow.
And then the other one would be the sequel to that, which is called At One, also under my Become the Night on Spotify. Didn't perform nearly as well, but that one, instead of doing it from the perspective of the person whose liberty is being oppressed, I did it from the perspective of the mythical monsters. And I extrapolated out the imagery from a James Lindsay lecture that he gave on the Gnostic parasite and tried to draw the parallels between the Gnostic and alchemic traditions of what we currently see now as critical theory in general and broader Hegelianism and Marxism. And like one of the lines from one of the bad guys, I sing in this very dramatic voice, "Come gather around at the altar of Hermes." I make it very pagan sounding, but also in certain ways Christian, because there's a lot of parallelisms between what's going on in their
absolutely.
deepest philosophy and Christianity. So you could mistake it if you're not listening closely enough for something Christian, but it is very decidedly not Christian. I made darn sure to emphasize that. That needs a rewrite, and that needs a remix and a reproduction, which I'm actually working on right now. It's a bit of a slog to listen to, but the lyrics I think are actually really good, myself anyway.
Okay. Now, recently at the cigar shop, was it the Dumpster Diver song?
Yes.
That's been a favorite of the general manager of. So
is that Matt the Tobacconist?
Yes, that
Heck
guy.
yeah, dude! I showed him that the other day. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So, he thought that was great. So
that was me and my buddy George. Me and my buddy George co-wrote the lyrics to that. It was great. It was so good.
Oh wow. So what has probably been your favorite thing that you've done, and you put so much work into it, and then you put it out in the public, and it just completely face planted?
Oh, that is my Meaning of Music series, hands down. I'll get you a link to that.
Okay.
So there's this guy. His name is Leonid Perlovsky. I think he's still alive. Fairly certain he's Ukrainian. Give me 1 second. Become the Night, Meaning of Music. He part of his research is about mapping the brain, neural networking and stuff. A lot of his research was used when developing AI language learning models. He's incredibly brilliant, but part of his passion is also music. So he's one of the few people trying to understand actually the psychology of music, not just oh, the sound hits your ears and dopamine hit the brain. Thank you so much. It's such a brilliant insight, man. Great. No, he actually touches on it far deeper than that. It isn't just touching on music itself. It's touching on art in general and aesthetics. One of his key things that really lit me up was that beauty and meaning are inherently and inextricably connected. You cannot separate the two. Meaning and beauty are connected. They're not the same thing, but they both come with the same byproduct. So if you experience beauty, you're experiencing something that's touching meaning inside of you. If you touch meaning, the beautiful is elicited inside of you. So either way, that's a whole other thing. I put a lot of work into this, basically just trying to present what he has in his book, meaning what is it? Music, Passion, and Cognitive Function. It's still a series I want to keep working on, but I just can't justify the amount of time it takes to make each one of these videos, because reading that book is so incredibly hard. It's such a hard read. And then trying to make these videos digestible is its own total pain in the butt. But here, I'll give you, do I have a link to part 2 in there? Yes, I do. Part 2's in there. I'll give you the link to part 1. Part 1 is great. It gives you a little digest on music philosophy throughout the ages, like the whole way back to the ancient Greeks, the whole way coming forward. And then part 2 dives into the basic mechanics of the mind. That's like concepts, emotions, and instincts, and how that relates to music. Well, broadly, how that relates to music. These are all building blocks towards when we actually hit his actual theory, which is that music, its fundamental purpose was to resolve cognitive dissonances created by language. And it gets very complicated, and I wish I could boil it down so much quicker. And I can tell by everyone's reactions as to why it got so many views.
Just fly over everybody's head.
I'm trying to make it not fly over everyone's head, because I think it's so important. I think it's so incredibly important. I don't know how to, I don't mean to use this term derogatorily, but I don't know how to dumb it down. I don't know how to dumb it down. I don't know if it's dumb downable. There's got to be a way to dumb it down. There's got to be, but I'll figure it out eventually, I guess.
Yeah, no, that actually sounds like really interesting though. So like, I think I'm gonna check that out like whenever I've got some time. So.
Oh yeah, it's fabulous, really, really fabulous.
Well, cool. Well, so as we wrap this up, are there any topics that you wanted to cover that we haven't quite got to?
Nah, I can't think of anything offhand.
Okay, well, this has been a great time.
Heck yeah, dude! I'm excited to see you at the Creator Conference. I'm really stoked.
You got my wife's attention on that, so.
What did she say? This is something I only had a sense of in my final year. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay.
That's actually where I discovered. That's where I discovered the first paper of it was in my final years of college for frickin' research writing, which is like an elective that it had nothing to do with music. But that finally, when I did more research and when he finally published that book, that's become a whole other and justifies my opinion on liturgical music. But regardless.
Nice. Oh, so I guess Julia's suggestion is if you start with the Greek philosophy of music and just go from there. So. Yeah.
You'll like Julia. You will like this video a lot. You'll like this video a lot.
Awesome.
There's 2 videos so far. You'll like the first one a lot. Second one, not sure. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time coming here. This has been an absolute blast. Once again, you said you look forward to meeting me in person. I look forward to meeting you. It's going to be great. I look forward to seeing what you got coming up next, especially with this second channel that we haven't even touched on.
Yes. Oh, crap. Yeah, okay. That's the thing I should have talked about. I'm sorry. I just started a second channel. It's called Fire of the Immaculate Heart. I'll be sharing my Marian journey with everyone. It'll be the first episode or first video that'll be releasing should be tomorrow, and it's on why fetal microchimerism is extremely strong evidence to support the Marian doctrines of the Catholic Church. I'll send you the video tonight if I can, Kyle.
Yeah,
it's a really good video. I'm really stoked about it. Like, there's actually there's scientific stuff that the fetus shares cells with the mother, and it doesn't just like float around there then go away. It becomes one with her body. Now think about Jesus and Mary.
Right.
And there's a lot of implications there. So I try to break that down.
Nice. Okay. Well, awesome. Well, I tell you what, I will post that on my community page whenever you post it. And
thank you.
And obviously, feel free to post it in my Discord server. So, and if any of you, dear watchers, all 9 of you currently watching right now, if you're not in my Discord server, there's a link to join in the description. Hope to see you there. So, and for those of you who stuck around for all 2 hours, thank you. This has been
Love
a
you guys.
blast.
Thank you.
So, I don't know when StreamYard actually ends these things, so I just kind of